Have you ever been waiting for something for a really long time and finally it looked like it was about to happen? How did that feel? Now you might think of a child looking forward to a Christmas or a birthday and the excitement that you see in them. Or maybe it was you, maybe waiting for your wedding day or becoming a parent or a grandparent for the first time. Maybe finally graduating or passing an exam, getting a dream job. Maybe it was something quite serious like getting the all clear from the doctor. Or potentially a loved one or family member who was finally coming home after being away for a long time. So hopefully now you've got something in mind. Can you remember how that felt? The emotions that you may have been feeling at that point, the excitement, the joy, the hope, the expectation. Maybe you had butterflies in your tummy, maybe you couldn't sleep or you had trouble eating. Just keep that in your mind. I want you to remember that feeling as we go into the context for today. Today we're going to look at Palm Sunday, often called the triumphant entry. And today we're going to really be thinking about that from the perspective of the crowds who were there on the day. Now, at the time that we come into this, Jerusalem would have been under Roman rule and would have been for about 90 years. Maybe worth taking a moment just to try and imagine what that might have felt like day after day, being under the rule of an outsider who is oppressing your people. Most of us here probably haven't experienced that. Maybe one or two have. There are certainly people groups around the world who are living through this right now. To help us try and imagine what life was like for these people at this time, I've just put a few images on the screen. These are stills taken from The Chosen, and they've tried to replicate what it might have looked like at the point in time where we enter the story. So just have a look, see if that helps you try and imagine what it was like a little bit. Now, up to this point, historically, the Jewish people were used to leaders chosen by God being strong military commanders. Joshua was an excellent military leader. The judges, although they did sort out disputes, were often military figures too, and of course the kings. So as we enter this narrative, I think we can assume that at least the majority of the Jewish people were quite understandably desperate for Roman occupation to end. I imagine they were pleading with God to come and free them and send someone to end what was going on. Again, by this point in time, the Jewish people had been waiting for their Messiah for a really long time. The Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament as we know it, was full of prophecies related to the coming Messiah. And at that point in time, they were certain that Messiah would come, and hopefully soon. The general consensus was that the Messiah would be a military leader. I would say it's understandable, actually, given some of the prophecies they had been taught. And I'm just going to pop a few of them onto the screen now. Have a look. See if you can see how people might have read these and thought that Jesus may be a military leader. There were obviously a lot of other prophecies as well, including that Jesus would be the perfect sacrifice, he would be pierced, he would be beaten, a lot more. But you can see, if you're under the oppression of another country and you read these things, you can understand why people may have thought Jesus was going to be a military leader and set them free. How else would this awful situation they were living with come to an end? And now, enter Jesus, who had already fulfilled some of the prophecies that they knew about him. He was born of David's line, he was born in Bethlehem to a virgin, and there would be more as well. Could this be it? Could this be what the Jewish people were waiting for? Could this be the leader that would free them from Roman rule? Surely he was what they've been waiting for. He would be the one who could save them. Now, keep that in mind, and now we're going to go into the Bible passage for today. Now, the triumphant entry is actually recorded in all 4 Gospels, which not many accounts are, which kind of implies how important it was. Now, I'm just going to read this from Matthew 21. As Jesus and the disciples approached Jerusalem, they came to the town of Bethphage on the Mount of Olives. Jesus sent 2 of them on ahead. "Go into the village over there," he said. "As soon as you enter it, you will see a donkey there, tied there, with its colt beside it. Untie them and bring them to me. If anyone asks what you're doing, just say, 'The Lord needs them,' and he will immediately let you take them." This took place to fulfill the prophecy that said, "Tell the people of Jerusalem, 'Look, your king is coming to you. He is humble, riding on a donkey's colt." And actually you can see I've just put in there as well that prophecy does come from Zechariah. So you can see once again, Jesus is fulfilling the prophecies that the Jewish people would have known about. Anyway, back to the text. Verse, I can't see, it's too small on here, 9 I think. The 2 disciples did as Jesus commanded. They brought the donkey and the colt to him and threw their garments over the colt, and he sat on it. Most of the crowd spread their garments on the road ahead of him, and others cut branches from the trees and spread them on the road. Jesus was in the center of the procession, and the people all around him were shouting, "Praise God for the Son of David. Blessings on the one who comes in the name of the Lord. Praise God in highest heaven." The entire city of Jerusalem was in uproar as he entered. "Who is this?" they asked. And the crowds replied, "It's Jesus, the prophet from Nazareth in Galilee." Now, from looking at that, can you sense the excitement in the crowd? There was shouting, there was noise. It sounds like a really busy, a celebration. The people were excited. Was this what the people were finally been waiting for? Was freedom from the Romans finally here? Maybe they were experiencing some of those mixed emotions we talked about earlier when we've been waiting for something. Was Jesus the one they had been waiting for? On this day, as we read, the crowds were excited. Could their occupation be coming to an end? This man was going to fulfill all of the Old Testament prophecies, like the ones we looked at earlier, and set them free. And he is, but not quite in the way they had expected. Things didn't go quite as the crowds expected them to go next. A brief reminder of some of what happened in the coming weeks. Quite soon after this event, Jesus went into the temple and drove the moneymakers out of the temple courts. Now, for people who thought Jesus was going to come and overthrow the Romans, Jesus then going into their temple and throwing over the tables may not have been what they expected. Jesus also told the people they should pay their taxes to Caesar. Again, not sure that would have gone down very well. Do you want to pay your taxes to an occupying force? They probably didn't, but that's what Jesus said, and that's what he asked them to do, not what was expected. Jesus criticized the religious leaders, called them hypocrites. He was right, obviously, but I'm guessing that didn't go down very well. He predicted his death. He was betrayed and arrested. He faced an unfair trial and was unfairly killed. Now, I'm going to guess that we're going to hear more about that next week. So I hope that's not too much of a spoiler, but just come back next week and you'll find out what happened next. So let's get back to these crowds. The people in the crowd who were excited, full of hope, they were finally going to be saved. What are they thinking and feeling now? The person that was supposed to save them has been killed. Where does that leave them? We actually read a lot that the people who were cheering Jesus when he rode into Jerusalem actually turned on him in the coming days. Jesus was not what they were expecting. So they gave up on him, turned against him instead. What was God doing? Why hadn't he come to rescue them in the way that they thought he was going to? Again, a bit of another spoiler alert here. This was actually not the end. And we know Jesus absolutely came to rescue people and set people free in a greater way than they could have imagined. But again, that's next week. So hold that. So you may have already got there, but how does this link to the series we've been going through on promises? Okay. Sometimes the answers to God's promises may not look the way we expect them to. From what we've looked at already, we can understand why the Jewish people expected the Messiah to be a military leader. It kind of made sense. They really wanted someone who would overthrow the Romans. When you look at some of the prophecies, it also kind of made sense. But turns out God was working on a much, much bigger plan. This was not about saving the people from physical Roman rule. It was about making a way for all people, for all time, to be in a relationship with God and set free from so much more than just unfair earthly rulers. The Jewish people wanted salvation from their current situation, but God was working on salvation available to all people at all times. He was working on something much, much bigger. But at the time, the people didn't know that. All they could see was what was in front of them. And I don't know about you, but I can really imagine the confusion and disappointment that they were going through at the time when they were watching the person who they thought was going to set them free being arrested and then killed. Everything for them seemed to be going terribly, terribly wrong. So it's another question for you to ponder. When we're waiting for God to come through for us on a promise or answer a prayer, how often do we think we have an idea about how God might do that? Do we think God is going to come through for us in a specific way? Just have a think about that a moment. I'll be honest, pretty sure I've done that. I think sometimes I've even felt the need to explain to God how he should do things. I'm not sure that's ever worked, and I certainly don't recommend it, but I'm just sharing it just in case anyone can relate to that. We like to figure things out. We want nice answers and a clear plan, but often things don't quite work out that way. And it can be hard, confusing, disappointing, overwhelming. And so what do we do with that? It may seem like a bit of an odd verse I've put up on the screen now, but this is a reminder to me, this verse, that God is so, so much bigger than I can ever understand. And a reminder that in actually trying to do so, it's just not going to work. At any point in time, there are a million different things going on that I know nothing about and that I do not understand. Ultimately, if I think I can understand God and everything he is doing, that's actually quite arrogant. And of course, I can't. He's God. I cannot understand him. We cannot and will not ever be able to comprehend how awesome, majestic, powerful, big, and wise God is. We cannot expect to understand all of his ways. We can often put our own logic ideas into play when we're waiting for God to act, unconsciously expecting God to act in answer his promises and answer our prayers in a specific way. The answers to God's promises don't always look the way we think they're going to. Jesus was not a military leader. He was not about to overthrow the Romans. He was actually going to do something so much bigger and better than that. Again, come back next week to find out more. Last week, Graham talked about God's promises to us. If you weren't here, recommend going back and having a listen, because he talked about discernment in regard to when God gives us specific promises and how to discern that, and worth a listen. You can catch up with that on our YouTube channel. When preparing for this, I had a sense that it was important for us to give some space to those who feel like they've had a specific promise from God and at least up until now, this has not come to fruition. You are maybe feeling that excitement and hope that we thought about earlier, that God was finally going to move in a specific way, but yet, at least as of yet, that has not happened. You may be experiencing some of the feelings we considered earlier: disappointment, confusion, not knowing what God is doing. Maybe you received a prophetic word from someone which you felt was right, but so far nothing, and you're feeling a little bit confused and disappointed even. I can't give you a nice explanation for everything or why that is. It could be a few reasons. Maybe it's a not yet. Maybe God is fulfilling the promise, but not in a way that you expected. Maybe we misheard. Maybe it's already been fulfilled and we missed it because we didn't look like the way we thought it was going to look. Or maybe we just don't know because God is so much bigger than us and we don't understand everything. If that's you, if that's stirring something in you, if it's pushing some buttons for you, we're going to have time very soon for you to come and specifically have some prayer for that. If that's you, when the band start playing again, and yes, Beth, please, you come up again. Thank you very much. Please do come up to the front over here, and the prayer team will appear, and we will ask people, God, to meet you in that space, to speak clearly, to meet you in your disappointment, and restore hope again. Even if that hope does not look like what you thought it was going to originally. But yes, please, if that is stirring something in you, if there's something going on inside, please do come up and grab some prayer for that. But just before that, a reminder. Today is Palm Sunday. And things sometimes may look disappointing and confusing at times, but Easter is coming. Hope is coming. Victory is coming. Love is coming. Freedom is coming. God is so much bigger and better than we could ever imagine.